Hello again. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos that go along with the book, Embodied Grace, A Woman's Path to Empowerment. You guys, this really is all about claiming peace, joy, happiness, abundance, all of the good, juicy stuff in life, right? And really understanding the steps you can take to create a life you love. For me personally, it was one of those things where I kept reading all these great books, but nothing was about how to actually do it. It was like, oh yeah, live a life of happiness and just be happy. Okay, but how, right? So that's what these videos are all about, is really walking you through the how steps. And the how comes in those questions, right? That's how you really determine, ask yourself those questions and things will be revealed to you. This next chapter is one of the most important ones. And this is a chapter entitled Taking Care of You, or actually it says Take Care of You in the book, but this is all about self-care, you guys. And we already talked about being intentional. We already talked about not being on autopilot, but I think there's a misconception when it comes to self-care. A lot of people still believe that it's selfish. And a lot of people still think that it's manicures and pedicures and going to the spa, when that's really not what self-care is about. Self-care is really about learning what it means to put yourself first. And this is not in a selfish way. This is a put on the oxygen mask for yourself before you put it on somebody else, because if you pass out, you can't help anybody. This is the same when it comes to self-care. This is learning where are your limits when it comes to like burnout and exhaustion, right? Because if you keep running yourself ragged, then you and everyone in your sphere, the people you work with, your family, whoever that is, they kind of have to deal with that too. Because if you're completely in this self-sacrificing energy, then you are so exhausted, you don't have the energy to give to others. Okay. So this showed up for me in taking on responsibilities that were expected of me, or that I quote unquote should do, right? Like saying yes because church needed a Sunday school teacher, or saying yes to everything that came up to with the PTA, right? Now, I did do Sunday school and it was my choice, but there were times when things would come up and they'd be like, can you please do this? And I really, in my gut, I would be like, I just don't want to do it. But then I would feel guilty. And so I would do it anyway. And then I was miserable because I was exhausted and I didn't want to do it in the first place. And I would just push through, and then I was cranky, and it's a normal thing. I know a lot of people do it. There's no judgment in doing that, because again, you guys, I think all of us have at some level, in some way, at some point in our life, have probably done things we didn't really want to do. There's a difference in choosing to do something, even if you don't want to do it, choosing it for yourself versus doing it out of guilt. It's a completely different experience. Okay. So I want to say, it's not that you give up doing those things, but it's doing so from that empowered space, from the intentional space, and from really being in control of your own decisions, not being pressured into it, not being guilted into it, and not being shoulded, you should do this because you're expected to. That falls into victimhood. And I know that sounds, martyrdom and victimhood really are similar vibration. Okay. So yes, you're doing everything, but that martyrdom energy doesn't do anybody any good anymore. And it's so close to victim energy that when you feel like you have no choice, that's victim mentality. So this is where you got to go back to the idea of, where are you giving away your power? Okay. It can seem like you have no choice, but the truth is you always have a choice in everything you do, which is why self-care is so important. Okay. So this is like, self-care sometimes is just saying no. Okay. One of the examples that I use in the book is that I actually remember having to say no to volunteering at a book fair because I hadn't been home, and we had been doing all kinds of other stuff, and we hadn't had a home cooked meal in like a week. But I was already doing so many other things that I was like, my family just needs one day. Like, we just need this. So I didn't have to tell them what my reasoning was, but I just remember saying, you know what, I just can't this time. And so I had to just say, I just can't do it this time. it was kind of, it made me feel guilty a little bit at first, but the more I worked with this energy, the more I realized that that really empowers me to be in divine alignment. It felt way better for me to say no this one time and be able to take care of my family in a way that felt good to me, right? And then not finding myself in burnout because I did trust, right? I did trust that, you know what, I feel this in my body so much that if I say yes to this, it's not going to be good. And I've got to trust that. That's self-care. Okay. So sometimes self-care is just learning how to take care of yourself to where you're at optimal performance or whatever you want to call it, so that you can really do the things well that you want to do. Okay. Now I loved all that stuff, just for the record. Like I loved being, the 4-H leader. I loved being in the like the party. I loved all of the things. I loved doing the service at the church. I loved everything, but you can only do so much before you get burnt out. So it's really balancing what is good for you and what isn't. Okay. Now, for Christian women specifically, I think the idea of Proverbs 31 gets really distorted because she is a powerhouse that, like, most Christian women want to be her, right? But I think the problem there is the misconception that she had to do it all on her own. Because if you remember back in that day, she had servants that were helping her. This was a totally different era, a totally different time. So sometimes even those stories can get, it's a misconception about the way things were back then, right? Um, I feel like there's an extreme here with what women are expected to do sometimes. And I think that's why the guilt comes in as to what we're supposed to do and what that's supposed to look like. But the thing is, if you're constantly taking care of other people and you're never taking time for yourself, then you're going to burn out at some point. Okay. You're going to get burnout. You're going to get lost. You're going to lose yourself. It can even make you physically sick, guys. So it's just this thing of really wanting to honor your own limits and your own boundaries so that you can show up the way God is calling you to show up in your life. Okay. So it's a really good point here when it comes to self-care and really tuning into what does self-care mean to you, right? Now, some of the self-care absolutely is, taking care of yourself and maybe going to the spa or whatever, but also sometimes that's not really what it is, right? Sometimes it's about just being able to say no and knowing what is right for you and what isn't. Okay. So again, you guys, I always like to get to the how-to part, right? So how to in the self-care is that really looking at what are the changes that you need to make for your overall health, and then how would that align with you? Why do you want to take care of yourself? Like, write yourself a little note and say, I want to take care of myself because I want to be the best wife and mother I can be. I want to take care of myself because I want to show up for my family in whatever way. I want to take care of myself because I love my job and I want to be at optimal, performance when I'm there. I want to take care of myself because I'm getting ready to run a 5K and I know that I don't want to be exhausted, right? So like, there's all of these things. Like, it doesn't matter what your why, but pick a why of why you want to take care of yourself, and then look at what is self-care to you. Okay. So self-care could be exercise. If you're exercising because you love yourself and you love your body and you know that it feels good to do it. The opposite of that would be if you're pressuring yourself to go work out because you feel like you're too fat, right? Like, that's a totally different energy. So if you want to exercise, make sure you're doing that. And again, of course, exercise is wonderful for everybody, but if you're doing it to like discipline yourself, or if you're doing it to get down on yourself or anything like that, that's not the right way to do it. Okay. The same thing. Does an Epsom salt bath feel good, right? A lot of times the thing here that gets really kind of tricky is that, like, pedicures and manicures and stuff like that, for a lot of people, they're maintenance. Because I know when I was speaking on stages, like, I felt like I needed my nails done to look presentable and look professional. So that was not a self-care thing. That was a maintenance thing. Okay. It was like getting a haircut. Like you just, there's certain things you need to do for maintenance for your body so that you look good going, right? But Reiki or energy work or a nature walk could totally be self-care. Massage for me also, it's almost a requirement for my body to be able to get that. So that's a maintenance thing. Like I need that. My body physically needs that. So look at different ways of what is self-care actually to you, right? Is it lunch with a friend? Is it acupuncture? Is it 5 minutes of just being in the quiet? Is it getting enough water every day? Like really look at how can you make self-care a priority, right? And knowing that self-care is not just about your physical body, but it's also about nurturing your soul, nurturing yourself, nurturing your soul, nurturing your emotions, like all of those things, whatever self-care is about you. And part of this goes into the idea of self-awareness. Okay. So I think I'm going to put that in a different video, even though it's technically part of this chapter, which is intentional self-care, because I really feel like self-awareness could stand alone. Okay. So I will see you guys on the next video. Talk to you soon.